Maya Sterling stared at the $15,000 bank transfer confirmation glowing on her phone screen, quietly hoping that this summer the money would finally buy her a sense of belonging. The frayed cuffs of Ethan's favorite flannel shirt brushed against her shoulder as he reached across the table for his coffee mug. It was a comforting, tactile reminder of the steady, unpretentious love she often took for granted while perpetually chasing her family's conditional approval. The late June morning sun poured through the wide, dust-speckled windows of the local diner, a cozy staple tucked away in a small upstate New York town. The air inside was thick and deeply comforting, carrying the rich, bitter aroma of black coffee, the sharp sizzle of bacon on a hot griddle, and the sweet lingering scent of warm cherry pie cooling on the front counter. In the corner, an old neon-lit jukebox hummed quietly, playing a soft 1970s country tune that wrapped the room in a deeply nostalgic American atmosphere. It was the kind of place where time seemed to slow down, where neighbors knew each other by their first names and their regular weekend breakfast orders. Sitting across from her, Ethan took a slow sip of his dark roast. At 32, he possessed a rugged, quiet strength. He was a man of few words but profound observation. To anyone else in the diner, and certainly to Maya's status-obsessed family, Ethan Hayes was just a simple blue-collar worker. He drove a dented, rusted old Ford F-150 that squeaked when it turned, and his hands were calloused from what appeared to be years of hard manual labor. He favored worn denim and flannel, keeping his immense, staggering wealth built through a highly successful real estate investment firm completely hidden from the world. He preferred it that way. He liked knowing that the people who loved him, like Maya, loved the man himself, not the bank account attached to his name. Maya, at 28, was the gentle heart of the Sterling family, though they rarely treated her as such. She had an innate, unconditional kindness that seemed entirely out of place among her relatives. As they finished their meal, an older waitress with silver hair tied back in a neat bun approached their vinyl booth, holding a steaming glass pot. "Can I get you kids some more coffee?" Martha asked, giving them a warm, crinkled smile. "We're all set, Martha. Thank you," Maya replied softly, her voice carrying a genuine warmth. She slid a crisp $20 bill under her empty ceramic mug, making sure it was hidden enough not to make a fuss, but visible enough for Martha to find it easily when clearing the table. "How is your arthritis treating you this week? Did that new cream the doctor prescribed help at all?" Martha's eyes softened, visibly touched that the young woman had remembered such a small detail from their conversation last weekend. "Oh, you are an absolute sweetheart for asking, Maya. It's a bit stiff in the mornings, but the cream does take the edge off. You two have a blessed weekend, all right?" "You too, Martha," Ethan said, giving the older woman a respectful nod. Just as Martha walked away to bus another table, the sharp, jarring marimba ringtone of Maya's phone shattered the peaceful quiet of their booth. The caller ID flashed her older sister's name, Sarah. Maya's posture stiffened immediately, a reflexive tightening of her shoulders that Ethan noticed right away. She answered the call, and before she could even offer a greeting, Sarah's frantic, dramatic voice pierced through the receiver, loud enough that Ethan could catch snippets of the panic. "Maya, it's an absolute disaster," Sarah wailed, the theatrics turned up to maximum volume. "Mom and Dad are going to be heartbroken. The 4th of July reunion is completely ruined." Maya's brow furrowed in instant concern. "Sarah, slow down. What happened? I thought Mom had everything planned out." "She did, but the rental agency for the Lake George estate just called," Sarah explained, her voice breathless and heavy with manufactured desperation. "They need a massive, immediate deposit to hold the property, and with Dad's recent business expenses, they just don't have the liquid cash right this second." We're going to lose the house, Maya. The whole family was looking forward to this summer. It's going to be humiliating. Without a single second of hesitation, driven by an ingrained, desperate need to be the savior her family might finally appreciate, Maya made a decision. She didn't think about her own savings account, meticulously built over the past 3 years. She didn't think about the modest life she and Ethan lived. All she heard was that her family needed help. "I can cover it," Maya said quickly, her thumb already navigating away from the call screen to open her banking app. "Tell the agency the money is coming. I'll transfer it to your account right now. Just make sure Mom knows everything is fine." "Oh my gosh, Maya, you are a lifesaver. I have to go call them back. Bye." The line went dead. There was no thank you, no "we are so grateful," just the abrupt click of a transaction completed. Maya lowered the phone, looking back at the transfer screen. Ethan reached across the sticky table, his large, calloused hand gently wrapping over hers and giving it a reassuring squeeze. His deep brown eyes reflected a complex mixture of profound love for his wife's impossibly sweet nature and a quiet, simmering frustration at her family's endless toxicity. He knew exactly what Sarah and her parents were like, but he also knew Maya had to see it for herself. "I'm going to step outside for a minute," Ethan said softly, his voice a low rumble. "Got a quick plumbing call I need to return about a busted pipe." Maya offered him a small, appreciative smile, entirely believing the lie. "Take your time. Go pay the check at the register." Ethan slid out of the booth and walked out the glass doors of the diner, the little silver bell chiming above his head. He crossed the sun-baked asphalt parking lot until he reached his rusted truck. Leaning against the scratched side panel, he pulled a sleek, high-end encrypted smartphone from the inner pocket of his jacket. His relaxed, easygoing posture instantly vanished, replaced by a rigid, commanding stillness. He dialed a number, and it was answered on the first ring. "Hayes," Ethan said, his voice stripped of its soft, rural drawl, now clipped and authoritative. It was the voice of a man who moved millions of dollars before breakfast. "I need a full financial background check on a short-term rental property in Lake George. Get Davis on the line. I want to know who owns it, what debt it's carrying, and if it's vulnerable. I have a feeling we might be making an acquisition very soon." Inside the diner, Maya stood by the register, her phone buzzing in her hand. She looked down, expecting perhaps a follow-up call from her mother, or at least an excited message about the summer plans. Instead, it was a cold, brief text from Sarah. It simply confirmed that the money had hit her account. There were no details about the itinerary, no joyful anticipation, and an agonizing lack of genuine gratitude. Maya stared at the screen, a hollow ache beginning to form in the pit of her stomach. "Don't worry," Sarah's text read. "We'll let you know the plans soon." A hollow promise that Maya knew, deep in her heart, came with a bitter expiration date. Friends, before we see exactly what Ethan is going to do about that hollow text message, let's take a quick pause. If you are still watching and your heart is aching for Maya's situation right along with us, please drop the number 8 in the comments below. It's a wonderful way to let me know you're right here on this journey with us. And if you haven't already joined our family, I highly recommend you click that subscribe button for Retribution Raw and turn on the little notification bell. That way, you won't miss a single moment of what happens next. Your wonderful support is what helps us keep creating these heartfelt stories to inform, uplift, and inspire you. Now, let's get right back to the story and see what happens when the 1st of July finally arrives. The 1st of July arrived with the nostalgic scent of pine needles and barbecue smoke in the air, but the Sterling family group chat remained painfully, deliberately silent. Sunlight streamed through the open kitchen window of Maya and Ethan's modest suburban home, carrying with it the cheerful, distant shouts of neighborhood children running through lawn sprinklers. Somewhere down the street, a lawnmower hummed a steady, rhythmic tune, painting a picture of a perfect, peaceful American summer afternoon. Yet inside the warmly decorated house, the atmosphere was thick with an unspoken heavy anxiety. Standing by the speckled laminate countertop, Maya methodically packed a faded red cooler. She tucked in a large glass bowl of her famous homemade potato salad, crafted from a recipe passed down from her grandmother, right next to a heavy container of Ethan's meticulously marinated barbecue ribs. She had spent the entire morning preparing, wanting everything to be perfect for the family gathering. However, her eyes kept darting to her phone resting on the counter. The screen remained dark. This oppressive quiet brought back a rush of painful memories. It echoed the exact same hollow, sinking feeling she had experienced on her wedding day, standing in her beautiful rustic reception barn, watching her parents make polite excuses to leave before the cake was even cut. They had claimed the drafty venue simply wasn't up to their standards, leaving Maya to celebrate the most important day of her life without them. She swallowed hard, pushing the memory away, and picked up her phone. She dialed her mother's number, pressing the speaker to her ear. It rang twice before clicking straight to Eleanor's polished, automated voicemail greeting. The beep felt like a physical sting. The familiar crunch of tires on gravel interrupted her thoughts. Ethan's dusty Ford truck pulled into the driveway, the engine rumbling before shutting off. A moment later, the front door opened, bringing a rush of warm summer air into the hallway. Ethan stepped inside, hanging his worn baseball cap on the peg by the door. He immediately noticed the packed waiting cooler and the tight, strained line of his wife's shoulders. Walking into the kitchen, he wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin gently on the top of her head. He didn't ask if they had called. The untouched food answered that question. "Hey," Ethan murmured, his voice a soothing, low rumble. "The town square is setting up early for the fireworks display. Folks are already laying out their picnic blankets. Why don't we grab the cooler, head down there, just the two of us, and get a good spot on the grass?" Maya leaned back into his solid frame, drawing strength from his unwavering presence, but she shook her head stubbornly. "Let's just wait a little longer, Ethan. I'm sure Sarah just got caught up with the rental agency. They probably just forgot to send the address in all the chaos of unpacking." Ethan didn't argue. He never forced her to face the ugly truth about her family before she was ready. He simply kissed her temple and walked over to the small kitchen island, pulling his encrypted tablet from his leather work bag. While Maya began wiping down the already spotless counters to keep her hands busy, Ethan opened a secure email from his attorney, Mr. Davis. The document detailed a highly sensitive, distressed luxury real estate portfolio on Lake George that Ethan's firm was in the final stages of acquiring. The report included a stark warning. The current owner, drowning in bankruptcy, was illegally subleasing the massive lakeside estate for weekend parties, desperately pocketing the cash before the bank officially seized the deed. Ethan's eyes scanned the legal jargon, his mind already calculating the quickest route to finalize the foreclosure and secure the asset. Needing a distraction from the deafening silence of her phone, Maya walked over to the living room sofa and sank into the cushions. She opened Facebook, mindlessly scrolling to pass the time. Suddenly, a notification popped up at the top of her feed. Her teenage niece had just gone live. Hoping to see a quick update on their travel status, Maya tapped the video. The screen instantly filled with high-definition footage of a sprawling, multi-million-dollar wooden deck overlooking the pristine, glittering waters of Lake George. The camera spun wildly, capturing the scene of a lavish, catered party. Waiters in crisp white shirts carried silver trays of hors d'oeuvres. Her father, Richard, was laughing loudly, holding a crystal glass of expensive champagne, while Sarah posed for photos in a designer sundress. Maya's breath hitched in her throat. The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow. They hadn't forgotten to send the address. They had taken her savings, the money she had transferred just days ago, and used it to throw an extravagant, exclusive party. They had actively, deliberately left her behind. As the video panned across the laughter-filled patio, Maya heard her mother's voice clearly over the music. Thank goodness Ethan didn't park that absolute eyesore of a truck out front. Sometimes the universe has a funny way of righting wrongs, usually when you least expect it, and often through the most unassuming people. The late afternoon sun dipped lower over the Adirondack Mountains, casting a warm golden hue across the sprawling, luxurious deck of the Lake George estate. Edison bulb string lights crisscrossed above the patio, swaying gently in the summer breeze, while the soft clinking of expensive crystal glasses blended with the upbeat tempo of a hired jazz trio. It was a picture-perfect gathering of the local elite, or at least those desperately trying to appear elite. Richard Sterling stood near an extravagant tiered seafood tower, wearing a crisp, pale linen shirt that looked as though it had never seen a hard day's work. He chuckled loudly at his own joke, swirling a generous pour of aged scotch in his glass. Standing quietly beside him was Arthur Henderson. At 62, Arthur was a man who had built a substantial fortune through decades of grueling, honest labor in commercial real estate. He possessed a rugged dignity and had absolutely no patience for empty posturing. He took a slow sip of his sparkling water, offering a polite but incredibly strained smile as Richard continued to aggressively name-drop local politicians and business leaders. The Sterlings had clearly invited Arthur strictly as a trophy guest, a calculated, transparent move to elevate their own social standing among the other attendees. It was a shallow tactic, and it was painfully obvious to the older, wiser investor. A few feet away, Eleanor and Sarah fluttered among the guests, making sure everyone noticed the lavish floral arrangements and the top-tier catering spread. "We spare absolutely no expense for our family," Richard boasted loudly, gesturing broadly toward the majestic facade of the multi-level timber and stone mansion behind them. Securing this rental for the holiday week was quite the feat, cost a pretty penny. But nothing is too good for the Sterlings. We always ensure our family gets the very best. Arthur hummed thoughtfully, his sharp, analytical eyes scanning the unique architectural lines of the vaulted roof and the distinct custom stonework of the massive outdoor fireplace. A nagging sense of familiarity tugged sharply at his memory. He knew this property. He didn't just know it in passing. His investment firm was currently managing its distressed assets. The previous owner was completely underwater, drowning in bankruptcy, and the estate was locked in a strict court-mandated foreclosure process. The property was explicitly forbidden to be leased out, let alone used for a massive commercial-scale holiday gathering. The current landlord was simply pocketing illegal cash from gullible people like Richard to flee their debts. Finding Richard's shallow vanity and loud bragging increasingly distasteful, Arthur politely excused himself, citing a need to stretch his legs and enjoy the fresh air. He walked away from the noisy, pretentious crowd, stepping down to the quiet lower tier of the wooden deck right at the water's edge. The setting sun was now painting the lake in breathtaking shades of deep violet and fiery orange. Pulling his secure phone from his tailored slacks, Arthur snapped a clear, high-resolution photo of the sprawling deck and the picturesque lake view beyond it. He quickly opened his encrypted messaging app, typing out a brief professional inquiry to report the highly unauthorized cash grab party happening on their pending acquisition. He hit send, directing the message straight to the top of the chain of command. His senior partner, Miles away from the clinking glasses and string lights, the quiet atmosphere of the suburban living room was heavy with an entirely different kind of emotion. The distressed lakefront property that had been nothing more than a sterile legal document on a tablet screen the night before suddenly snapped into sharp, deeply personal focus. Ethan sat on the edge of the floral-patterned sofa, his large, calloused hand gently resting on Maya's trembling shoulder. She stared blankly at the dark screen of her phone, the cruel reality of her family's betrayal still washing over her in relentless, painful waves. She had given them everything, and they had left her behind because of the man she loved. Suddenly, the secure phone in Ethan's jacket pocket vibrated sharply against his chest. He pulled it out, his eyes dropping to the glowing screen. It was a high-priority message from Arthur Henderson. Ethan opened the text, his gaze locking onto the attached photograph of the sun-drenched Lake George patio. He blinked, glancing from the small screen in his hand to the fading, paused image of Sarah's live video still lingering on Maya's open laptop nearby. He studied the distinctive stone fireplace. He noted the sweeping angle of the heavy wooden railings. The puzzle pieces locked together with a resounding, undeniable click. The very people who had taken his wife's savings, who had actively excluded her, and who had endlessly mocked his livelihood, were currently trespassing on a property he was days away from owning. A protective fire ignited in Ethan's chest, burning away the gentle, easygoing plumber facade. He locked his phone, slipping it back into his pocket. Ethan wiped a stray tear from Maya's cheek, his posture straightening as his voice lost its usual soft drawl, taking on a tone of absolute, quiet authority. "Honey, how would you like to own a lake house?" "Well, it looks like the tables are about to turn in a major way. If you are still watching this video and finding value in this story, please drop the number 1 in the comments below just to let me know you're right here with us. While you're there, I'd love for you to leave a meaningful comment or a warm wish for Maya and Ethan as they finally take a stand. And if you haven't already, I highly recommend that you subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell so you never miss a single video. Your wonderful support is exactly what helps us continue creating great content to inform, uplift, and inspire you every day. Now, let's continue with the story and see exactly how Ethan handles this. The rusted engine of Ethan's old Ford F-150 roared to life, but this morning it wasn't heading to a plumbing job. It was driving straight toward a reckoning. The profound sadness from the previous evening had entirely vanished, replaced by a quiet, unshakable resolve that now anchored them both. Early morning sunlight reflected off the sleek glass facades of downtown Albany as the battered pickup truck pulled into a pristine, reserved parking space beneath a towering commercial building. It was a turn to the Davis, he addressed. Are there any? He has been given your. It is a. He had left. Where does that? I want you. Her hand. 45. As they. Maya. Now. Through the. The festive sounds of a brass band playing on a neighbor's dock drifted over the water, completely masking the sound of tires crunching on the gravel driveway of the Lake George estate. Eleanor Sterling's worst nightmare was unfolding in broad daylight. She had spent the entire week fretting over the mere possibility that her son-in-law might somehow ruin the aesthetic of her carefully curated holiday gathering with his battered work vehicle. Ironically, that was exactly what he was doing right now. Ethan confidently guided the rusted, dented Ford F-150 past the meticulously manicured front lawn, shifting the vehicle into park right behind a gleaming row of leased luxury SUVs. The squeak of the old truck's brakes felt like an abrasive interruption to the cultivated elegance of the afternoon. On the extravagant wraparound porch, the atmosphere was steeped in a pretentious sort of wealth. Guests, clad in crisp summer linens and designer sunglasses, mingled under the bright July sun, sipping iced tea adorned with sprigs of fresh mint and holding delicate crystal cocktail glasses. It was a scene built entirely on superficiality, funded by stolen generosity. Ethan turned off the ignition and stepped out of the cab, his worn boots hitting the pavement with a solid, grounding thud. He walked around to the passenger side, opening the heavy door for his wife. Maya stepped out into the sweltering summer heat wearing a simple, flowing sundress. She didn't carry a designer handbag or wear flashy jewelry, but she possessed a quiet, radiant grace that no amount of money could purchase. She held her head high, her hand resting comfortably in Ethan's strong grasp. They were calm, utterly unbothered by the sudden, sharp stares directed their way. It didn't take long for the family to notice the intrusion. Sarah spotted them first from her position near the floral arrangements. The color instantly drained from her face, her carefully painted smile twisting into a mask of pale, frantic anger. She practically sprinted across the sweeping green lawn, her expensive heels sinking slightly into the soft grass. "What on earth are you two doing here?" Sarah hissed, her voice an aggressive, venomous whisper. She was terrified of making a scene, prioritizing the family's manufactured image over basic decency. "You weren't invited. You are completely embarrassing us right now. You need to turn that hideous truck around and leave before Dad sees you." It was too late. Richard and Eleanor had already abandoned their conversation with a local politician, power walking toward the driveway with matching expressions of sheer horror. They moved in quickly, attempting to form a human barricade to shoo Maya and Ethan away, like unwanted pests, before the rest of the high society guests could realize what was happening. "Maya, this is incredibly inappropriate," Eleanor scolded under her breath, her eyes darting nervously toward the porch. "We are hosting very important people today. People with actual class. We cannot have Ethan walking around looking like he just finished fixing a toilet." Maya looked at her mother, feeling a profound wave of sadness rather than anger. "You took my savings to pay for this party, Mom, and you couldn't even bother to send me the address." Richard puffed up his chest, his face flushing a deep, angry red. "That was a family contribution, Maya. And frankly, this is a private leased estate. If you don't get back in that junk heap and drive away immediately, I will have no choice but to call the local authorities and have you escorted off the property for trespassing." The hushed, frantic commotion had inevitably attracted the attention of the partygoers. Conversations began to stall, and curious eyes turned toward the driveway. Among the onlookers was Arthur Henderson. The older, sharply observant investor had been looking for an excuse to escape the stifling atmosphere of the deck. As he stepped through the parted crowd, his eyes fell upon the tall, broad-shouldered man in the flannel shirt standing calmly amidst the Sterling family's frantic hostility. Arthur's eyes widened in sudden, profound recognition. Richard raised his voice just a fraction, hoping to sound authoritative for his audience. "I mean it, Ethan. I will call the police." Arthur Henderson completely ignored Richard. He walked straight past the flustered patriarch, extending his hand toward Ethan with an expression of the utmost respect and genuine delight. "Mr. Hayes," Arthur boomed, his warm, dignified voice carrying effortlessly across the silent lawn. "I had absolutely no idea my firm's senior partner was joining us today. It's an honor to see you outside the boardroom. Tell me, is this the distressed foreclosure property you finalized the acquisition for this morning?" The collective gasp from the Sterling family sucked the air right out of the sweltering July afternoon, leaving Sarah staring open-mouthed at the plumber she had spent years laughing at. Silence has a weight to it, and on that luxurious wooden deck, it pressed down on the Sterling family like a physical burden. The hired jazz trio, sensing the sudden, icy shift in the summer air, had abruptly stopped playing mid-measure. The cheerful clinking of glasses faded into an uncomfortable, suffocating quiet, replaced only by the gentle, rhythmic lapping of the lake waves against the wooden pylons below. The late afternoon sun began its slow descent over the Adirondack Mountains, casting long, revealing shadows across the expensive patio furniture. It was a beautiful, tranquil setting that starkly contrasted the profound, sinking embarrassment currently painted across Richard and Eleanor's faces. The facade they had meticulously maintained for decades was crumbling in real time, right in front of the very people they had desperately tried to impress. Richard Sterling, a man who had spent his entire adult life curating an image of untouchable superiority and old money grace, suddenly found himself stammering like a caught child. He looked from the wealthy, highly respected Arthur Henderson to the tall, quiet man in the frayed flannel shirt standing firmly on the gravel driveway. Desperate to save face, Richard forced a hollow, booming laugh that echoed awkwardly across the silent lawn, sounding more like a bark of panic than amusement. "Well, Arthur, there seems to be a massive misunderstanding here. Ethan, my boy. Maya, darling, we were just waiting for the right moment to welcome our honored guests. Come up to the deck. Let me grab you a drink." Sarah, realizing her sneering arrogance from mere moments ago was now a catastrophic liability, quickly tried to pivot. She smoothed down the fabric of her designer sundress, her hands visibly shaking, and took a hesitant step forward. She attempted to play the role of the loving, protective older sister, a role she hadn't genuinely occupied since childhood. "Maya, sweetie, we've just been so incredibly stressed about all the holiday arrangements. We didn't mean to snap at you down there. You know how Dad gets under pressure. We're family, right? You know we love you." Ethan remained perfectly silent. He didn't gloat, nor did he puff out his chest. He simply stepped closer to his wife, gently placing a warm, calloused hand on the small of Maya's back. It was a silent, powerful gesture of support, letting everyone know that he was the immovable wall standing right behind her, but actively allowing her to take the absolute lead. Maya didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her tone was incredibly steady, laced not with fiery rage, but with a profound, quiet sadness that cut far deeper than any shouting match ever could. She slowly opened her simple leather purse and pulled out the heavy, embossed folder she had signed just a few hours prior in downtown Albany. "You took my savings to pay for a lavish vacation you never intended to let me attend," Maya said, her voice carrying clearly in the crisp afternoon air, reaching the ears of every single guest frozen on the deck. "You lied to me for weeks, and you actively excluded me because you judged my husband. You looked at his worn boots, his old truck, and the fact that he works with his hands, and you decided he wasn't good enough for your superficial friends. You were terrified he would embarrass you. But Ethan's worth isn't in his bank account, even though he could buy and sell this entire estate 10 times over without blinking an eye. His worth is in his kindness, his patience, and his honesty. Things this family clearly knows absolutely nothing about." The hollow promise Sarah had made to let them know the plan had finally materialized, but Maya was now the one writing the schedule. She held up the legal deed, the gold seal catching the fading sunlight. "This property was illegally rented to you by a bankrupt owner. My husband's firm acquired the foreclosure this morning, and as of an hour ago, the deed is solely in my name." Richard's forced smile collapsed entirely, his face draining of all color. Eleanor looked as though she might faint, clutching the wooden railing for support. "Since Ethan and I weren't invited to your reunion," Maya continued, her voice unwavering and absolute, "you are no longer invited to our home. I am giving you, and everyone here, exactly 1 hour to pack your belongings and vacate my property." Arthur Henderson gave Ethan a deeply respectful nod of approval, a silent acknowledgement between two men who understood the true value of hard work and integrity. He turned to the other bewildered guests, subtly waving a hand toward the driveway. You heard the lady. Time to go, folks, he murmured, immediately leading the exodus toward the line of parked cars. Eleanor, tears of profound humiliation welling in her eyes, reached out a trembling hand. Maya, please. We are your parents. You can't do this to family. Maya looked at her mother, feeling a freeing, beautiful sense of closure finally wash over her. She realized in that crystal clear moment that true family doesn't demand you change who you are to be loved. Family doesn't do what you did, she replied softly, turning her back on them. The next 60 minutes were a masterclass in silent, agonizing humiliation. The Sterlings, stripped of their pride and their assumed authority, were forced to furiously pack their designer luggage and expensive catered food into their least luxury vehicles. The neighborhood, having sensed the drama, watched quietly from their own adjacent docks and porches. The arrogance that had defined Richard and Eleanor for so long had been completely dismantled, not by yelling or aggression, but by a quiet man in a flannel shirt and a woman who finally knew her own worth. Maya and Ethan stood by the edge of the water, not gloating, simply watching the toxic chapter of her life close itself out. As the last taillights disappeared down the road, Ethan wrapped his strong arms around Maya, looking out over the peaceful, glittering water. "So, Mrs. Hayes," he murmured with a warm smile, "what should we make for dinner?" As the quiet waters of Lake George finally washed away the noise of pride and pretense, Maya and Ethan found the peaceful sanctuary they truly deserved. It reminds us that true wealth isn't measured by the car in the driveway or the label on a shirt, but by the quiet, calloused hands of unconditional kindness. Just as a humble light can guide us through the darkest paths, when we strip away our superficial judgments, we open the door to genuine compassion. Take a moment today to appreciate the quiet, unassuming love in your own life, because a simple act of grace has a beautiful way of finding its way back home. Welcome back to the present moment, friends. This is the storyteller behind Retribution Raw. Maya and Ethan's journey deeply touched my heart while putting it together, mostly because it speaks to a universal truth. So many of us have learned over the years, the most valuable things in life are often wrapped in the humblest packages. We have all known what it feels like to be underestimated, and there is a profound comfort in watching genuine goodness quietly triumph over arrogance. If Maya's quiet strength or Ethan's unwavering loyalty brought a bit of warmth to your afternoon, or if you simply believe that a good heart always wins in the end, I would be truly honored to read your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever been surprised by the hidden kindness of someone others overlooked? Let's talk about it. And if this story resonated with you, please consider joining our growing family by subscribing to Retribution Raw. Together, we can keep sharing these meaningful, heartfelt moments that remind us of what truly matters. Maya Sterling stared at the $15,000 bank transfer confirmation glowing on her phone screen, quietly hoping that this summer the money would finally buy her a sense of belonging. The frayed cuffs of Ethan's favorite flannel shirt brushed against her shoulder as he reached across the table for his coffee mug. It was a comforting, tactile reminder of the steady, unpretentious love she often took for granted while perpetually chasing her family's conditional approval. The late June morning sun poured through the wide, dust-speckled windows of the local diner, a cozy staple tucked away in a small upstate New York town. The air inside was thick and deeply comforting, carrying the rich, bitter aroma of black coffee, the sharp sizzle of bacon on a hot griddle, and the sweet lingering scent of warm cherry pie cooling on the front counter. Maya Sterling stared at the $15,000 bank transfer confirmation glowing on her phone screen, quietly hoping that this summer the money would finally buy her a sense of belonging. The frayed cuffs of Ethan's favorite flannel shirt brushed against her shoulder as he reached across the table for his coffee mug. It was a comforting, tactile reminder of the steady, unpretentious love she often took for granted while perpetually chasing her family's conditional approval. The late June morning sun poured through the wide, dust-speckled windows of the local diner, a cozy staple tucked away in a small upstate New York town. The air inside was thick and deeply comforting, carrying the rich, bitter aroma of black coffee, the sharp sizzle of bacon on a hot griddle, and the sweet lingering scent of warm cherry pie cooling on the front counter.